Hello, and welcome to the Case for Collaboration. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that if you're interested in what you see here today and you want to get the slide presentation, you can do so from the QR code or by going to the BIM Cider website, finding the BCS 2022, and downloading it from the handout section. Please feel free to grab that information and share it with those you think would find a benefit. All right. Let's take a look at our agenda. So we're going to do some quick introductions. We're going to get some tailored expectations. We're going to talk about BIM coordination and then BIM collaboration and what the difference is. We'll have some final thoughts, and then of course we'll leave some time for questions. All right, let's jump into it. So for introductions, my name's Carl Storms. I'm the Technical Solutions Lead at BIM Track. It's always awkward to talk about yourself. That's why I love to have this little slide deck, and this slide in particular that sort of talks about what I do. The Reader's Digest version, I've been in the AEC industry for just about 25 years now. I like to say I've done a little bit of everything, residential, commercial architecture. I've spent some time on the GC side doing BIM and VDC coordination, taught Revit at the local community college, and most recently before joining BIM Track, I worked for an Autodesk reseller and consultancy, working all over North America and the world, helping people come from 2D to 3D and onto that full-fledged BIM workflow. But that's enough about me. You came here to learn about collaboration. So of course, it's always good to have a tailored expectations about what you're going to see. As we can see here on the screen, expectations versus budget. I think we've all run into that one before. So let's see what we're going to talk about in today's presentation. So let's start off by talking about morning coffee. So I come from Canada, so Tim Hortons is my preferred beverage of choice. Give me a double-double and I'm a happy boy. But that may not always be the case. So perhaps we're, taking our second choice of Starbucks, and that's fine and dandy. Now, of course, there's several different flavors of coffee you can have, and that's my point here, is that what I like may not be what you like, and there's lots of ways to have our coffee or caffeine in the morning. So if we put that through the lens of BIM collaboration, yes, it's true, I work for BIM Track, but BIM Track isn't the only tool or the only way to collaborate in the BIM ecosystem or environment, if you will. There's lots of tools out there, and many that aren't on this slide, that allow you to collaborate and expand your workflow when you're working with BIM. So again, my point here is that I'm going to talk about my expectations and the expectations of those that help with this presentation. Your understanding may be different and your tools may be different, but the underlying message behind it all will resonate. So as I mentioned, I had help. So this particular session is built off of a couple of previous online panels where we took the information from our esteemed guests and we put it all together for this session. And those two panels were the BIM coordination meetings, What's Your Secret Sauce, and BIM coordination meetings, What's Your Secret Sauce Volume 2, Collaboration for the Win. There were some great AECO experts in there. I like to give them their due. So Kathleen, Aaron, Tom, Mira, Alice, and Scott helped during one panel. And then during another panel, Alice and Caitlin also joined, as well as Ryan, Darren, Jacob, and Brody. And again, a tip of the hat, and thank you to those that helped out with all of the information that I'm going to share here today. So now that all the introductions have been done, let's go ahead and hop right into it. What is BIM coordination? So, I can tell you what it's not. It's not magic. Although I do love this quote, any significantly advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, Arthur C. Clarke, but coordination isn't magic. Of course, that also means that it doesn't necessarily come with an easy button. Work is involved to coordinate, and if everyone sees the benefit, it becomes much easier. And that's kind of what we're going to look at here today. If we want to get technical, we can take a look at the dictionary definition, the process of organizing people or groups so that they work together properly and well. Technically, that's just a coordination definition, but I think it works in this scenario. So what are some of the questions? These are some of the things that we pontificated about in the panel that we asked and the outcomes. So this is an interesting one. How do you get and keep, that's very important, your coordination meetings organized? Now, I won't go through and read off every topic there on the screen, but some of the things that are worth mentioning. Understanding the project documents, the model is going to make that a lot easier. You're not spending time getting up to speed when you're working on it. Having an agenda and having that agenda be precise. So you're not spending 4 or 5 hours when you could spend 1 or 2. Get everything out ahead of time. We don't need to go over every little thing. And this is the beauty of being the ability to delegate. These are the big ticket items. The smaller ticket items you can deal with on your own. I don't need to see every single thing. BIM coordination is not about babysitting. Now, again, full disclosure, yes, I work for BIM Track. And some of the people in that panel thought, the idea of using custom properties or status in BIM Track makes it help. For example, something like coordination meeting. Again, you can call it whatever you want, and you can do this in any system. But the idea is that if you let those that are actually out in the field, boots on the ground, if you will, you give them the ability to say, hey, this needs to be discussed in the next coordination meeting. You have the ability to make sure you're covering the content that needs to be covered based on those that are actually out in the field and seeing it. So by giving them the ability to be part of the process and to actually address what they bring up, you're going to get more buy-in. Which just so happens to lead into our next question. How do you get buy-in from those involved? And just saying it's your job isn't going to cut it. So you need it to be more of a culture thing. And we hear a lot about culture this day and age, that we want to have the right people, the right environment. And that's a big thing. And that construction is no different from that, or is any of the disciplines in the AECO world. I think we all know that positive reinforcement works best. And it never hurts to sort of make sure we know how to do this. So we want to make sure that we gather things that come from previous experiences. This is one of the biggest things that we sometimes lose sight of. We have that site super or that person that's been in the industry for 20, 30 years. Experience is so valuable, and we're losing it more and more. So getting access and being able to share that experience is a great thing. Now, the idea of being able to reward or gamification, people by general nature, especially us guys, are competitive. So to give that little extra something, you'd be amazed at the difference it makes. And so this next story comes from Darren Roos. I've shared it multiple times. It's been on podcasts. It's all around, but it just bears repeating. So a simple 99-cent chocolate bar, maybe $1.50 now with inflation, can do a lot of things. So what Darren would do is to get people excited about their coordination meetings, he would offer up a full-size chocolate bar. So whoever created or finished all of their clashes and their tasks first would get that chocolate bar. And when they had the coordination meeting, the winner would be given the chocolate bar. And all of those that didn't win, they kind of want to have that feeling, or maybe that chocolate bar for the 3 o'clock sugar fix. Darren then decided to kick it up a notch, and he actually started putting trophies for each winner inside of the model. So you can see here there's a little trophy case. Every week there's a different trophy, and this becomes a source of pride with all those working on the project. So they'll go in, they walk around the model, they see the little trophy case. It's just a little thing, but it's the ability to show appreciation for your work and that little peer pressure that I want to have that too. It's a little thing, but it certainly helps, and Darren's had great success with it. Now this is another great question. Trust me when I tell you, you don't need every person involved in the project in the room. And I think everyone would agree with that sentiment. But you want to make sure that you have the right people in the room and that those that are required actually attend. Adding this into your BIM execution plan is a good way to ensure that they're there. We've learned in the last couple of years that virtual meetings work just as well as in person. They don't replace in person. It's good to have that in person meeting from time to time, but virtual can save a lot of travel, a lot of time, and get a little better attendance. You also want to make sure that it's not just the design and the management. You want to get those field people involved. What about technology? How do you use that to your advantage and make sure it doesn't become a distraction? This is the key thing, the distraction part. A lot of times people misunderstand or think because it's the latest and greatest they need to have it. Totally not true. And that first point really brings that home. A cool feature doesn't help if it's not practical. VR goggles are great for when I'm at home doing my Beat Saber, but they don't work for this particular job. Other jobs they do. Maybe it's XR. So it could be a project by project evaluation. And what doesn't work for one may work for the other. What doesn't work for one team may work for another. But having that discussion and that thought ahead of each meeting makes a big difference, or each project. Again, and that's that whole deploy it for the project theme. And this last one sometimes is a hard pill to swallow, especially when, like me, you're the person that likes tech. But it's a great tool. It does great things. It's certainly going to make things more efficient, but it's not the right tool for this project. This is a project, we've done it 100 times. We have a process down. Adding something new is not going to add benefit. It's just going to be a distraction. So having those hard conversations sometimes with yourself to understand when it's a good time to bring in new technology and when it's not. You also kind of have to understand that the BIM and VDC people that are working on a project, they all come together. They're all part of that process. And sometimes having everyone as part of the workflow can be a distraction. But you can also have it in reverse. And what I mean by that is one of the examples that we've heard during these panels was the idea of being on the design side. I'm commonly on the design side myself. And you get the people, in my example, was doing some VDC coordination in the trailer, working with Revit and with Navisworks, and having a seasoned MEP person come into the office and say, show me the model. And then once I showed them the model, they got very excited and they explained to me why this is a good design, but not practical because we need so much clearance on this side. We need to make sure we have enough room on that side to make sure that it actually works. So experience versus design is a big difference, and having everyone involved in that process helps. So this was a good one. Always fun when we have a panel again. What's some mistakes that you learn the most from? And we've all been there. But the big value is that if you have a mistake or something goes wrong, you learn from it, you share it, and we go on. You want to make sure that you're not just modeling for the sake of modeling. And I've seen this with many people, especially when they're new to the tool. They're like, hey, I can make this do anything. But if the solution isn't practical or possible or in the budget, then it doesn't really solve the problem. We don't need everything micromanaged. I think that goes without saying. And understanding when you're scheduling these meetings or doing your coordination is a big key as well. Friday afternoons, not a good time for coordination meetings. Having a good relationship with those people on the project obviously is a big thing. But again, sometimes that's hard to justify and quantify. When you have just a single bad trade or bad experience or bad outcome, and again, we don't understand, we don't always know what's going on in that person that's had a bad day. So maybe we chalk it up to experience and move on. But sometimes we have to make that call and move on and go a different route. And this last one about third parties is really kind of important. You know, if someone hires a consultancy firm for whatever reason to handle the BIM side, that's great. Um, but they need to be able to be accountable for what they're doing. So if you hire an architecture third-party firm to do your MEP work, they need to know what they're doing to do that MEP work. So they need to be accountable for that. So now let's kick it into gear and move into the collaboration side. So what's the difference? What's collaboration? Thankfully, the old BIM dictionary can help us out here. We've got the BIM collaboration event. We've got collaborative BIM project, BIM collaboration guide, and of course our BIM management plan, kind of like a BEP here in North America. But the idea is that we're taking it a little bit further than coordination. So what does that really mean? So what that really means is that coordination is contractual and collaboration is voluntary. And this particular slide was the ending of that first panel, and it's what sparked the entire second panel that we had later on. The idea behind what you need to do versus what you want to do or could do to improve the project. So which better and which is more important, coordination or collaboration? I completely second this bolded point at the top that you need them both. One is about the people, one is about the data, it's relationships, and you also need to know that you need technology for both. We talked earlier about how, you don't want the wrong technology, but there's underlying technologies like Wi-Fi in the job site and how sometimes it can suck. So you want to make sure you've got that right. We also talked about co-working, and what we mean by co-working in this scenario is perhaps at the beginning of the project, everyone is on site for 2 weeks. Now that we're able to go back to being on site. So all the trades, all of the disciplines are on site for a couple weeks. So they're able to share things, contact each other. There's less emails. This is great, but as you can see, sometimes the opposite happens. It can be a distraction. You need to have that fine medium. And that's why, a finite amount of time, a couple weeks on site before the project, a couple weeks on site during the project, I think is a happy medium. So what are we looking at here? So coordination in a silo, collaboration, it needs a team. That really is the key thing here. Coordination, it's basically a list of things to get done. Check things off and get done. I like a good list as much as the next person. But collaboration is that teamwork. There has to be feedback, and the teams has to, working towards the good of the project, not the individual. You deal with an issue when you're coordinating. You communicate the way to solve the issue when you're collaborating. So you're not just focused on what you're doing, but you're focusing on the entire project and how everyone can benefit from something that may improve. So how do you handle projects where not everyone's on board the collaboration chain or a collaboration train? Choo-choo! You want everyone on board, but you're going to have projects where not everyone is there. And if you have even just 10%, whatever that works out to, one discipline, one person, whatever, everyone else kind of has to make up that missing slack. So it makes it harder for the rest of the team. Now, this big one, why are they not willing to collaborate? And that's a good question to ask. How can you do it? And sometimes they're new, they're unsure. It was required for the project, so they bid it, hoping they could learn. You want to make sure that you're willing to share information when you're in this situation. I mean, maybe ahead of that, you want to make sure that you're qualified before you bid, but that's not what we're here for. You want to make sure you got the right people on the project. And some projects require a different level of expertise in different areas. So you might not always be able to use the same people all the time that you always use. Hard decisions have to be made. Sometimes you have to work around them, or as we see there in that little underlined quote, sometimes you have to go through them. Unpleasant, but required. And you want to make sure you're taking advantage of the latest and greatest tools, cloud-based emerging tech. You want to make it easy. Again, understanding the right tool for the project. Not everything is required on every project. The people skills and the soft skills are the hardest ones to find and the hardest ones to pass on. And this was echoed by Darren telling us the stories about the Snickers bar and the, giving the gamification with rewards is, before you go into that system, the idea was, hey, you should do this because it's the way that you do it. And I believe the saying is you get more flies with honey than vinegar. So this is, I think, for a lot of people pretty obvious. True collaboration is more than just communication. It requires a process, commitment, and the tools to get you there. How do you get others to get there? And that's the key. We're talking about collaboration. So you're there. How do you bring others up? So you offer support. You share wisdom. Short lessons. And I really like this. I think Mira came up with this when she was saying it's the idea that, you've got 5 minutes. You explain your process, explain your workflow, you share it. And those people that you shared it with, they're going to remember that, and they're going to share it with the other people. And 2 people tell 4 people, tell 8 people. So one small step at a time, we're bringing the entire industry up. And anytime I talk about this, I always like to share this picture. Unfortunately, I don't know who drew it. I don't know where to give credit. It's the typical, levels of BIM. But it shows it in a different light. So you see you got level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3. But what I really like and what I like to focus on in this image is that the people in the level above are helping everyone else from below up. We bring the entire industry up when we help each other and get everyone to that next level. So we have a higher baseline, and that's what we all want. Now, of course, one of the things that's kind of different that we don't normally talk about, and we have a schedule for when our drawings are due. We have a schedule for when things are involved. Um, think about doing a BIM coordination schedule, like a construction schedule, or like Lean. The idea that we have that just in time, so the engineer isn't doing the engineering for the entire project in that first 2-week, 2-month window when it's not needed for 2 years down the road. It allows us to sort of keep more balls in the air, if you will, when we're juggling, but it also allows us to be more efficient with our time. A good BIM execution plan, I think, goes without saying at this stage, but maybe it doesn't. The owners are something that we really need to get involved as well. AECO, the O is very important. But when we're always together and we're always preaching to the same choir, we all know this stuff. Sometimes it's hard, and they just hear the buzzwords and they ask for things they don't need. So the educating the owners is really good. And this highlighted segment here, you get what you pay for, not what you ask for. It's very harsh, but it's very true, and owners get that when we start talking about the bottom dollar. Now, this came from someone in one of the panels. It was a participant quote, and it was, "I'm fine with having RFIs increase during the coordination process if it means less change orders during construction." Well said. So the idea is if we spend a little time up front, it costs way less than spending more time on the back end. So some final thoughts as we wrap up. Coordination is about putting it all together. We get the pieces, we put them together, we put our lists, we get to work. Collaboration is about getting the best from each player. And I think that's a very succinct way of saying it. It's about team, it's about community, it's about working together for the betterment of the project, not the individual. And I think that's a great way to end this session. A few resources, and again, if you go to the website and download this PowerPoint, you can have access to all of these tools. The clicks are clickable, or the links are clickable is what I'm trying to say. And of course, we'll pause for any questions. And if there's no questions, we'll finish up. You can, again, there's the QR code for the presentation. Snap it, click it, and you can reach out to me if you have any questions. And with that, I'll say thank you very much for attending. It's been my pleasure, and we'll